Travel industry makes billions of dollars from travelers overpaying. Today, we're exposing the traps that drain your wallet and how to avoid them. Hey, financially savvy travelers, welcome back to another episode of the Thought Card Podcast. I'm Danielle Desir Corbett, your host and a financially savvy traveler. Many of us are overspending on travel without even realizing it. We're falling for shiny marketing tactics or getting caught off guard by hidden fees we didn't see coming. Pauline Frommer knows exactly how the travel industry works and ways the industry gets you to spend more than you should. Pauline is the host of the Frommer's Travel Show and also president of Frommer Media LLC, which is the publisher of the iconic Frommer's guidebooks, a series that has sold over 75 million copies worldwide. So today, Pauline is pulling back the curtain on the travel industry's pricing tactics. She's also sharing how to spot real value and give us a smarter game plan for booking great trips on any budget. Now, if you enjoyed this episode, which I know you will, I literally have a page full of notes that I need to keep on my desk when I'm booking travel. So I know that you're going to love this episode just as much as I am. But also consider listening to episode 178 next, because in that episode, I break down the sneaky airport mistakes that cost me so much money and how to avoid them too. Welcome to The Thought Card, a podcast about travel and money, where planning, saving, and creativity leads to affording travel, building wealth, and paying off debt. We are the financially savvy travelers. Where do you see travelers? Well, before I even get started, I want to also share that I actually saw you at a conference in New York City in 2022 or 2023. And during that conference, I believe it was Women in Travel Summit. And you had a wonderful presentation about being smart, budget travel. And from that on stage, I was like, you're just so amazing. And I wanted to, talk to you.
Oh, that's so kind.
Yeah. So that's really the beginning. And then, of course, I saw you at IMM and other things like that. But one of the things I really took away from your talk a few years ago was the fact that as travelers, we may often be getting ripped off a bit because we're just not aware of these marketing tactics that travel companies and the industry is using in order to kind of get us to part ways with more funds. So with that, where do you see travelers getting ripped off right now? And without them even realizing it, what are you seeing that's happening?
If you had asked me this question before the beginning of May, my answer would have been different. In May, the Biden administration's junk fee regulations went into effect. And so that means it's easier to see what actual costs are. And if you can't see the actual costs, there's now a mechanism for telling the Federal Trade Commission and getting them to clamp down and make sure that these bad actors comply with the law. So before May, I would have said it was resort fees at hotels, because resort fees are just ridiculous. They're simply a way for the hotel to look like they're less expensive than their competitors on Expedia, Orbitz, Travelocity, but still charge you more and pay lower taxes on what you are spending at the hotel. So this was a tax dodge by hotels too. But as of May, all of the sites that give you hotel costs, all of the hotel sites, they have to show you the price with those ugly fees in it in big letters at the start of the search, which leads to some wacky looking searches. I just looked at Las Vegas, and they'll have in small letters, nightly rate $70 with fees and taxes $140, because these fees literally can double the price of what you're paying, but at least they're less deceptive than they used to be. So I'm not going to say they're the worst thing that travelers come up against. It may be the idea that cruises are all inclusive. They are not. In fact, there was a study that showed that people tended to spend a third of the cost of the cruise once on board because they had so many devious ways to separate you from your money. And if you went to the casino or the spa, you tended to spend two-thirds of the cost of the cruise once on board. So people think cruising, oh, it's all going to be all inclusive, but everything is extra. If you want a Coca-Cola or a rum and Coke, that's extra. If you want to go on an excursion, that's one of the biggest ripoffs in travel, the excursions that the cruise lines sell. They're going to take a photo of you as you go on board the ship and then charge you an arm and a leg for it. There are so many ways that the cruise lines have of separating passengers from their hard-earned money. You can not spend too much on a cruise, but you have to know in advance that you're going to be hit with a lot of extra charges. So one of my big pieces of advice is never, ever buy the shore excursion from the cruise company. It's always a ripoff. I'll give you an example. In Alaska, one of the most popular shore excursions is to the Mendenhall Glacier in Juneau. And you can take it with the cruise line. They'll put you on a bus. You'll have a wonderful tour with a ranger, and then they'll put you back on the bus and bring you back to the ship. That costs probably $75 to $100. There's a public bus at the port. It will take you to the glacier in the same amount of time, maybe less, because you won't have to wait for your fellow passengers. It costs about $5 each way. Then you get to the national park, you pay an entry fee, maybe another 10, and the ranger tour is free. So you've paid, what, $20 instead of 75. That's some markup.
Wow. I mean, everything you mentioned, I've lived it. I've experienced it firsthand. And I think sometimes as travelers, because we feel like we're on vacation, we're just like, it's whatever. And I always try to think against that because the more you're spending unnecessarily, it does take you away from future trips or spending perhaps on activities and experiences that you truly value, which we'll talk about a little bit later.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I think convenience is definitely something that travelers want, but they're also sometimes put their hands up and they're like, whatever, and just swipe the card. And there's a lot of waste happening as well. Would you agree with that statement?
Oh, absolutely. And I think actually, if you feel like you are spending more than you should be, it dampens your enjoyment of the vacation. If you feel like you're getting a deal, you're going to love it even more so. But if you feel like you're spending too much, then every little wrinkle becomes bigger and you start feeling like you've been taken advantage of. My father, Arthur, who founded the Frommer Guides, he also for about a decade was a tour operator. And he got a really, really great discount from hotels and from the airlines to go to Scandinavia in the dead of winter when there were only like 5 hours of daylight. And he thought, will anybody be interested in this? You know, it's going to be dark most of the time. People came back saying it was their best trip ever, mostly because I think it was such an incredible deal. And that made everything so much brighter and happier because they felt like they were smart in doing this type of travel and they enjoyed themselves. He was a good tour operator, but he always felt it was because it was such a great deal that people felt it was the best trip they'd ever taken.
And I think that's why I fell in love with travel very early on when I started in 2018. It was the chase of the deal. It was just feeling like I won compared to everyone else on this flight. So there is
Right.
something really, really special about the deal. But I know that the travel industry is using deals and using other shiny marketing tactics out there to make their offers look more attractive than perhaps it actually is.
Yeah.
So Can you give us some examples of how the travel industry is using these marketing tactics, these shiny marketing tactics, to get us to part ways with our funds?
Well, you have to remember that there are no set prices in travel. Really, it's always what the market will bear. If a hotelier has not rented out that hotel room for the night, he or she is losing money. So, with that mindset, you have to think about what interests you and build your vacation around that rather than chasing after what looks like a deal. I'll give you an example. In many destinations, there are sightseeing passes that allow you to go to multiple attractions for one cost. And they'll always tell you it's always 30% less than you would spend. But with many of these passes, you would have to go to 4 or 5 attractions in one day for them to pay off. And often these attractions are not the marquee attractions in the town. You know, it's like the torture museum or something else really stupid. And so before you start looking for deals, you have to ask yourself, what do I want to get out of my vacation? How much do I want to do in the course of a day? Would I be happy running around to 5 sites to make this deal pay off or not? So it should always have to do with what does vacation mean to you?
This always brings me back to value based spending, this concept in personal finance is like where you're spending money on the things that you appreciate, that you will find valuable. And I think in this society, this day and age, it can be really hard, especially I would say for younger folks, because you have social media, you have friends, you have FOMO, you have all these things that is just vying for your attention. And I can definitely see how people can kind of fall into some of those traps. Now, the whole premise of this episode is to help us make smarter decisions, and that ends up being financial decisions.
Sure.
So, in the moment, as we are considering to swipe the card or, input our credit card information to buy, whether it's an offer, an upsell, or anything like that, how can we quickly decide in the moment if this is worth it for us or if it's a clever money grab?
Go old school, by which I mean most of the travel information that you're going to be basing your decisions on is actually disguised marketing. If you are watching a video from an influencer, that video has been paid for by the venue that they are discussing. So I know it's old fashioned, but look to guidebooks like Frommer's, like Fodor's, like Lonely Planet. Look to newspaper travel sections where the journalists never ever take paid trips. Look to the sources that are journalistic so that you know you're getting impartial, usable information rather than just being sold to. Plus, look at the marketplace sites. There are many places you can go to get an idea of what things should cost. So, to give one example, tours. It's really hard to figure out what a tour will cost just because it has so many moving parts. You have the hotel, you have the guides, you have the transportation. Some have meals, some have special activities like biking or skiing, or there's all kinds of things that can go into a tour. There are 2 tour marketplace sites. One is called Tour Radar, and the other one, I'm blanking on the name of the other one, but it will come to me. And say you want to go to the Amalfi Coast of Italy. You put in 1 week Amalfi Coast, and suddenly in front of you are 20, 30 offers from different tour operators. The first one costs $75 a day, but you're staying in hostels and you're getting around by public transportation. The second one is $200 a day and you're staying in very nice hotels and having private guides and it's more plush. The third one is $50 less than the second one because it's run by a local company, not a multinational one. And so they have the inside scoop. And so you can quickly look and see what things should cost when you go to Tour Radar or Travel Stride. That's the other name.
I am familiar with Tour Radar, but Travel Stride is a new one for me. So I will definitely put that on my wish list and bookmark it so I can definitely see what's being offered there. So we kind of tease this a little bit, and it definitely seeps into everything that we're talking about today. Tell us about the Frommer family philosophy on spending where it matters and saving where it doesn't. How did that philosophy come to light? And how did your family, your father, pass that down to you and it impacts your travels today?
Well, the fact that my father became a travel writer was very much a fluke. He was drafted into the army during the Korean War. Luckily, he was the son of immigrants, so he spoke both German and Russian. He had learned that from his parents and also had studied those languages. So instead of being sent to the battlefields of Korea, which was a very bloody, terrible war, he got sent to Germany instead. And he started traveling all around Europe. I mean, he had no money. His father worked in garment factories his whole life. He never thought he would have the opportunity to travel. And one day he was sitting in a Parisian cafe, nursing the one cup of wine or glass of wine that he could afford. And right in front of him, a tour bus went by filled with Americans, their noses pressed against the window. And he had a revelation. He thought, oh boy, I am so much luckier than they because I have no money and they have enough for that tour. But I'm in the cafe and they're seeing Paris from behind glass. I'm meeting Parisians and, having a real on the ground experience, and they're seeing it from a distance with guides in between them and the destination. And so that was always his philosophy, and he passed it down to me. And he felt there's ethics in how you spend your money. You don't want to waste your money. If you have extra money, give it to charity, do something good with it. Yes, treat yourself to a vacation. There's nothing better in terms of educating yourself and expanding your mind, but don't waste it. So another thing he taught me was he would always say, what do you do in a hotel room? You sleep. So you're unconscious for most of the time you're in a hotel. So if that hotel is clean and well located, because you don't want to spend all your time commuting to the sites you want to see, go with the cheapest hotel possible because you're going to be unconscious for most of the time in the hotel. So why overspend for that? What does it matter? If it has very glamorous design, it doesn't matter unless it's a resort hotel and that unless the hotel really is your vacation. But if you're in a great city, go with the cheapest hotel you can.
That is so, so powerful. And I think that philosophy even transcends travel, right? It goes beyond travel as well. So that's very, very powerful. So here on the Thought Card podcast, we're all about application. So I would love to apply the Frommer family philosophy to a real life example. So if you had $1,000 to spend on a vacation, what would you prioritize and what would you cut out? And walk us through that thought process of how you're making those decisions.
Well, you have to be careful with transportation because those costs can be very, very high. Sometimes a place where the on the ground costs are low, just getting there is going to eat up that $1,000. So for example, we've been talking on frommers.com recently about how inexpensive Albania is and Romania and Poland and how you can go to these wonderful European countries without paying the prices you would in Paris or Hamburg or Geneva. You can pay a fraction of what you would, but if you're not careful, you're going to spend your savings in getting there. And so you have to be savvy about how you search for airfares. So if you're going to a secondary city that's far away, figure out what is the cheapest way to get over whatever ocean you have to get over to get there. And so fly into a Paris, fly into Munich, fly into whatever is cheapest, and then do an entirely separate search for the cheapo airlines that will hop the continents of Asia, that will hop the continents of Europe, and then make sure you have enough hours between your flights that you don't miss the second one because you don't want to risk that. So you figure out your transportation, but then figure out what the costs on the ground are. A lot of people decided to go to Iceland in the last couple of years because airfares to Iceland are dirt cheap. But you go to Iceland, you order a burger, it's $30 because everything has to be brought in from elsewhere because they have very little arable land there. So little farming. Yes, there's fishing, but the costs of food, the cost of in country transportation, the costs of hotels, it's all outrageous. So you have to look at both of those factors. And then you get a good guidebook. That will be the best thing to do because you'll be able to quickly, in one fell swoop, see what the top attractions are, what their costs are. I would say the thing I say never to skimp on is attractions. You're in that country to go to the great museums, to take the cooking class, to bike through the beautiful wine vineyards, to do the things that will bring that to light. So you don't want to skimp on attractions, but everything else, skimp. And maybe restaurants. I guess I am a foodie and I do believe cooking is an art. And every once in a while, I will splurge on a meal if a chef is supposed to be really great. But sometimes you can get a meal just as good by going to a place the locals go to. So, you can have a vacation that includes both the high end meals and going to a grocery store and grabbing stuff for a picnic and sitting in a beautiful spot overlooking the scenery.
Oh my gosh, I'm also a foodie and I could relate to Iceland. I've been to Iceland 3 times and I always pick the most expensive destinations or the ones that I fall in love with.
Right.
So it's always very, very funny.
Well, it's a great place and great people. They have the
Yes,
most books printed in Iceland per capita of any place on earth. And since I'm a reader, that endears them to me.
absolutely. Absolutely. Do you say that planning and research is an important tenant, important value to being a savvy traveler, to being able to not get scammed or get tripped up by a lot of these like travel marketing out there? How much planning and research do you think it takes? Is it an important thing for us to do? Is it something I know a lot of travelers also like kind of just, I'll just figure it out when I get there. But if you're not aware, you can definitely slip into it could be very hard to manage your finances.
It can be hard to manage your finances if you don't plan, so you should definitely plan. And frankly, you will enjoy your vacation more if you put a lot of planning and research into it. There was a study done about travel and happiness, and they looked at whether people were happiest before their trip, during their trip, or after their trip. No surprise, people were not that happy after their trip. They were dealing with messy homes, they were dealing with piles of emails and other chores. But surprisingly, the happiness didn't reach its peak during the trip. They found that people were happier before the trip. Because when you're dreaming about something, when you have expectations, those are never disappointed. They're only disappointed in real life. So, reading a guidebook, watching a movie set in the destination you're going, finding that perfect restaurant by reading all the reviews, those are joyous activities. You can make planning for travel part of your life. It can be really fun. And frankly, when you go to a place and you understand the history and you understand the culture a little bit, you'll always still be surprised. It'll still be a huge surprise what it's like to actually be in that country, but you'll have a richer experience of it. You're not only going to not get taken and save more money by prepping, you'll have a richer vacation. I think, unless it's like a beach vacation, maybe there's not that much to study there. But if you're going to, say, Thailand, and you don't know anything about Buddhism or about their recent history, just spending an hour reading or watching a film set there will so enhance your time on the ground.
Absolutely. There's been recent studies that have come out that's saying things like movies, how influential movies have become, the
Oh, yeah.
visuals, and how people are traveling to concerts and traveling to see their favorite musicians and all of that. I really definitely want to read that study about travel happiness because sometimes I feel like when you're, let's say, you're so busy and you're working, the
Yeah,
before planning could be very hard to do and it may feel like a chore. But I
sure.
love this reframe where it's like the expectations, just thinking of it as a joyous activity, it could definitely make the planning process a lot more enjoyable.
Yeah, yeah. If you like streaming services, if you like movies, just watch something set in the destination. That's a wonderful thing to do, or watch a documentary. Before I went to Vietnam, I watched Ken Burns' documentary series on the Vietnam War. And at the end of that series, you see a country that was totally in rubble. And so having that background and seeing it bombed and destroyed on the screen, going to Vietnam itself felt like witnessing a rebirth. There was such joy to it just because I knew in a visceral way what hard times that country had because of what they call the American War. And I was able to talk to people more intelligently when I met them there and have real conversations based on the knowledge I had. And I just watched a documentary, but it really helped.
It definitely impacts not only your trip, your life, but you can now share that with others. So, very, very powerful, very powerful. So, I want to switch gears a little bit to talk about resources. Again, when I saw you speak at that travel conference, you had shared sites that are really good to consider and use for travel planning and other sites that maybe are not living up to expectations. So today, what resources or tools do you personally use for finding travel deals, whether that's airfare, flights, or even vacation packages where they bundle them together?
Well, for airfares, I use a virtual private network because with AI, the airlines are getting much savvier about tailoring fares to where you are from. There are companies whose only job, this came out, the FTC talked about this in December. Their only job is creating profiles of citizens in different parts of the US and different parts of the world. And so they know what the most popular brand of car is where you live. They know what your rent probably is. So instead of the airlines looking to one another and seeing what the other airlines are doing and pricing airfares to be competitive, with AI, it's all shifting a bit and they are playing around with how much they think you will be willing to spend. And so prices are ticking up. But if you use a virtual private network, which hides where you're from, you can set your browser. Say you're going from New York to Paris. You can see how much the Parisians are paying for that ticket, how much New Yorkers are paying, how much it'll cost if it says you're in Ohio. And believe it or not, you will see three different prices. So that's a good thing to be doing for hotels as well. You have to remember 1 out of every 10 human beings on earth works in the travel industry. It is one of the most massive industries on the planet. It's a wealthy industry, and they are using every cutting edge tool to get you to pay more than you want to. So you need to be strategic about this. So VPNs are a great thing to do. As I said earlier, you want to go with the impartial sources of travel. So on frommers.com, to give one example, we're always trying to put out consumer friendly articles on how to save. So a recent one I did was based on an industry conference I went to. So I felt like a spy there because it was all the big airlines, it was all the big, and a guy who founded a vacation rental site that was then gobbled up eventually by VRBO. He said from the stage that whenever he rents a vacation home, what he does is he goes to VRBO first because VRBO always lists the management company. And then he never books through VRBO. He does his research there, and then he calls the management company to get over having to pay VRBO's crazy fees. So by going directly to the source, he saves hundreds of dollars. on that rental. So you'll find all kinds of tips like that on Frommers.com, NewYorkTimes.com. I mean, there's a lot of old school journalistic sources that are good for this type of information. We also have an article on which are the best search engines for airfares. Everybody always says Google Flights. When we had a researcher spend months doing flight comparisons, he found that Google found the cheapest flights exactly 0% of the time. It was the fastest, and it had a lot of bells and whistles, but so do many other sites. There were two sister sites, Momondo and Kayak, that in our recent test most consistently found the lowest price. But in this case, when I talk about it, I say, okay, do your research there, but you probably want to book directly with the airlines because we're living in a time of climate change. There are crazy weather patterns that are disrupting flights. And so if you book through a third party, you are last in line to get your problems fixed behind everybody who booked directly with the airlines. So you need to book with the airlines now.
Absolutely. One of the things that I've been using, I'd love to get your feedback on, is I look at the price of the airfare to get to said destination, like Iceland, for example. And then I look at the combined vacation package deals that come out, once a week or whatever. And I compare the airfare alone to the bundled vacation price. And that's how I've been determining, you know what, maybe this vacation package to Iceland makes sense versus me booking one-on-one. Is that smart strategy, or do you have any other tips or ideas of how to do that?
Yeah, we researched this and we found that for resort like destinations and nature focused destinations like Iceland, generally air hotel packages are better than booking separately. Now, why are they better? Because these are places with lots of competing resorts. A hotelier does not want his competitors to know how low he's willing to drop his prices. And so hotel prices can be hidden in an air hotel package. When it came to city-based vacations, though, we found that the deals weren't as good. I write the Frommer's New York City book, and so I researched this thoroughly, and I found you didn't really save anything by booking an air hotel package to New York City. You do say to Hawaii a lot, and you don't have to wait for them to come out once a week. You can go to an Expedia or cheapcaribbean.com or one of the other packagers, and you'll find them all there. But we found that it wasn't foolproof. It wasn't foolproof. Sometimes you can save a lot, sometimes not.
That's very, very helpful. And I love those recommendations as well. Well, Pauline, we are heading to the rapid fire round. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, I'm going to prep the listeners. So, what we're going to do here is we're going to ask Pauline in this lightning round. I'm going to throw out some common travel purchases and or add-ons, upgrades, and Pauline is going to let us know, is it a good deal or is it a skip and why? Okay, are we ready, Pauline?
Okay.
Okay, number one, prepaying for breakfast at hotels. Is that a skip or a deal?
Skip, unless the hotel is really famous for the quality of its breakfasts, especially in Europe. You can pay 20 euros extra and get to a place where they're going to give you a hard roll and a coffee that was brewed hours before. You'll usually pay much less and have a better breakfast if you get your own.
All right, that's a skip. Okay, the single supplement fee. So this is when you're traveling solo on a typical group vacation, and because of that, you have to pay an extra X, Y, Z.
You don't usually get the choice whether to skip it. I mean, if the single supplement is being charged, I don't know any way around it. So maybe if you don't want to pay it, look for another company that has a similar tour or cruise or whatever it is that doesn't charge the single supplement. But in certain markets, you're going to be stuck with it, sadly.
Yes. Okay. Next one, travel insurance upsells at checkout. So, for example, you're about to book a flight, and then at the bottom, they're like, add this in, deal or skip.
Always skip. You never want to buy travel insurance from the company you are traveling with. You don't want to do it for two reasons. One is they're going to make a commission, so you're paying extra for their commission. Second is if they go belly up, you've probably lost your insurance too, the insurance that would have given you your money back. There was a very famous British company, Thomas Cook, that had been in business for over 150 years. It went belly up during the pandemic. A lot of people who had bought travel insurance through them also lost their travel insurance. Nobody thought they would go belly up, but you just don't know.
All right. Drink packages on cruises, deal or skip?
Wow, I guess that depends on whether or not you're an alcoholic. I just think the amount you have to drink to make those pay off is way above how much I weigh. I couldn't drink that much on a cruise. So you know yourself.
Got it. Priority boarding, deal or skip?
Oh, skip it. Who wants to spend more time on the plane?
City tourist passes, deal or skip?
That depends on the city. Sometimes they can be very good, like City Pass in New York City has, I think it's 6 attractions, which is doable. And you can do it, I think, in 5 days. So you have enough time to do them. And it will definitely be a savings. And sometimes you can skip the line. I know the passes in London are a total ripoff because most of the museums in London are free. The same for Washington, D.C. So it really depends on the destination.
All right. Third party booking sites, deal or skip?
Sometimes they can be a good deal, especially for packages, as we were discussing. But as I also said earlier, I don't buy airfares directly from them anymore just because things are going wrong so much more frequently now. And I don't want to be in the position to be last in line.
Got it. Basic economy airfare. So this is like the bare bones. You don't earn points and miles. You don't have checked luggage, like the last on the list. Deal or skip?
When you are 5'3" or under, as I am,
As I am too.
I'm okay with being in a middle seat. It really depends, I think, on the length of the flight. You know, if it's a 2, 3, even 4 hour flight, I'll take the savings. If it's across the Atlantic, I might forego basic economy because I probably don't want to be in the middle seat that whole trip.
Gotcha. Final two. Airport lounge access. Deal or skip?
If it's included with your credit card or something like that, sure, why not? If you're going to Asia, oh boy, do you want that? Because they have really nice lounges there. In the US, it's not worth it to my mind.
Gotcha. And the final one, car rental insurance from the rental counter at the airport, typically. Deal or skip?
It all depends on whether you own a car, what your own insurance will cover, what country you're going to. If you go to Ireland, you're not allowed to skip the insurance. So this is one where you have to do the research and it's a very personal decision. Usually people are really pushed into paying more than they need to on this, though.
Gotcha. All right, Pauline, this was such a pleasure. So much fun. I
Oh,
have a
thank you.
page full of notes. So this was absolutely wonderful.
Well, you gave me better questions than I usually get. So I am so thrilled to talk to you. This was a delight.
Oh, that's amazing. So, so amazing. Would love to wrap up with learning more about your podcast. I'd love for our listeners to head over to your show. So just give us a little information about what you cover. And I know you have so many episodes for them to listen to next.
Sure. Well, I was on radio for 20 years, actually. And unfortunately, radio has gotten to be all politics. So I lost my show during the pandemic and started this podcast to kind of keep our listenership going. The New York Times called the Frommer's Travel Show one of the 13 best podcasts for travel. We try to find really great guests who will either fill you in on some of the trends in travel that you may not have thought about, or fill you in on different types of travel. We had a wonderful guest recently talking about cemeteries around the world and how fascinating it can be to go to those places and how they really reveal the history of a place. I had another guest who talked about true crime. and travel. A lot of people are traveling to see sites where terrible things happened because this is an obsession in our culture. And, I actually feel like when you make your trip a pilgrimage of some kind, you often enjoy it more, whether it's because you really love a certain type of flatware, and so you go to Italy to find those dishes, or whether you go to see the penitentiaries where your favorite true crime people are incarcerated. Whatever it is, sometimes having a goal with your trip can make it more interesting. So a lot of our podcasts talk about these goal-oriented trips. So it's a mishmash. It's all interviews, but it's one of the joys of my life getting to do it and getting to talk to all these smart people.